has started the recording. It will be posted online, and the information provided, including public comments to the City of Seattle, is considered a public record and may be subject to public disclosure. If you want more information about that, you can see the Public Records Act, which is RCW Chapter 42.56. Next slide, please. So just some things about WebEx in case any of you are unfamiliar with it. It's good to mute your line when you're not speaking. And when you are, select who'd you like to send your messages with, so you can put things in the chat. That's fine. Do remember that that's part of public record. If you're having any issues, just raise your hand, and we have somebody who's more professional at me than this to help out what's going on. Next slide, please. If there's any, it doesn't look like anybody's dialed in, but if there is, if you have questions at the end of the presentation, please press *3 to raise your hand. Once you've raised your hand, you'll hear the prompt, "You have raised your hand to ask a question. Please wait to speak until the host calls on you." I'll be managing that conversation. To hear a list of commands available during your meeting or event, please press **. If you no longer want to ask a question or the host has already called on you, you can press *3 to lower your hand. You'll hear a message, "You have lowered your hand." Next slide, please. So, of course, we want to be respectful of all the opinions and experiences that come to this meeting. We want folks to be active listeners during the presentations, because that's where the meat of this is going to be. If anybody is disruptive, intimidating, or aggressive, we will mute you and we'll ask you to provide your comment online or by letter. Also, please keep your comments as brief as possible and related to the technology in focus today, which is the hostage negotiation throw phone, to allow everybody an opportunity to speak. Next slide, please. Okay, at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Captain Jim Britt. He is our technology captain and will be delivering the presentation today about the hostage negotiation throw phone.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Just going to read through some of the slides, and we'll get to the meats of what we're dealing with. Many folks on this call are veterans of these particular presentations, so we'll breeze through this relatively quickly, but we want to make sure that we're articulating well for the recording for those first timers. The City of Seattle's definition of surveillance. Surveillance is defined as technologies that observe or analyze the movements, behavior, or actions of identifiable individuals in a manner that is reasonably likely to raise concerns about civil liberties, freedom of speech or association, racial equity, or social justice. Certain technologies such as police body cameras and technologies for everyday office use are excluded from the law that we are complying with today regarding the surveillance ordinance. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. As discussed previously by Heather, there are several different methods by you can comment on the technologies. The survey link, and Eleanor has also included it in the chat here. The link is there on the website, or you can even mail a comment by a snail mail to the Surveillance and Privacy Program at the listed address with the post office box there. Again, this will be on the recording for anybody who needs it, and for anybody who wishes to click and provide comment, the link is in the chat. Next, please. Thank you. The rundown of events today, it's pretty straightforward because we only have the one technology. We'll be presenting on the technologies currently in use, which is the hostage negotiation throw phone, and then we'll be opening for public comment. A quick clarification on the public comment. I know in the past we've answered questions on the fly as we've gone through, and in retrospect, looking at that, that has not been the best method of making sure that we get good, full answers to the public. So what we'll be doing today is we'll be taking the questions that come in, and then in the next public engagement session, we will endeavor to provide whatever answers that we can related to those questions. I apologize in advance for any frustration this may cause. I know a lot of folks want the answer now, but I want to make sure that SPD is providing clear, articulate, and correct answers. But as Heather said, please feel free to ask the questions, and we will answer them in the next meeting or in the writing. So again, I apologize in advance for anybody who's frustrated by that, but it's our goal to make sure that we give full and complete answers to the questions that are brought up. Go ahead to the next, please. Thank you. Additional comments. For additional comment opportunities unrelated to these specific surveillance technologies, please utilize the following resources, including your council member, which can be reached, or the broad council there at council@seattle.gov, or you can use the SPD contact information, and that's on the SPD website. Go ahead. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get into what we're talking about today. Go ahead and move to the next slide, please. What we're talking about today is the hostage negotiation throw phone. And as with all things, we lead off with the mission of the Seattle Police Department, which is to prevent crime, enforce the law, and support quality public safety by delivering respectful, professional, and dependable police services. What is the technology we're talking about today? The hostage negotiation throw phone is part of a communication system used to negotiate with subjects in hostage or crisis situations. The phone case, the box it's in, includes microphones and speakers that enable two-way communication in an overt or covert manner. It also includes hidden cameras to support threat and tactical assessments in these situations. Why we use the technology. The throw phone systems of this nature are standard equipment for hostage and crisis negotiation teams throughout the country. At times, there are no other means of phone communication with the subject in a hostage or barricaded person situation. The system allows the team to facilitate the development of negotiation strategies and ensure the safety-related information is relayed. Go ahead. The data collected. The delivery of the throw phone is typically pre-negotiated with the subject via hailing or other means. By hailing, we mean we basically get on a loudspeaker or we yell real loud and we try and talk to them and let them know that we need to put this get this into there with them so that we can talk to them. The live feed video is monitored via the HNT, which is our hostage negotiation team, or by our SWAT personnel, either from the HNT truck via a system networked laptop or through a remote view application in range of the Wi-Fi system that's in place with that equipment. The video recorded on the system hard drive is only accessible by HNT members who have controlled access either by password or by permission granted from the computer running the software. The protections in place. Deployment into a constitutionally protected area requires an authorized entry into the area via a warrant or a warrant exception to include consent, exigent circumstances, or the community caretaking emergency situation. Deployment of the throw phone system during an incident involves the authorization of the HNT supervisor, incident commander, and the SWAT commander if SWAT is present on scene. RCW 9.73.030 expressly prohibits an exception to the all parties consent rule for the monitoring, intercepting, and recording of calls involving communications with a hostage holder or barricaded person. There's a list of related policies here, which include SPD policies as well as the Washington Privacy Act, Chapter 9.73. And I know we breezed through that rather quickly. What it really comes down to with the hostage negotiation throw phone is that communication is key for the police department to be able to work towards the most desired and peaceful solution. Establishing communication with a person in either a hostage barricaded situation or a person in crisis in a hostage or barricaded situation is critical to our abilities to work towards the most desired outcome, which is everybody safe at the end of the call. We'll go ahead and open for public comment at this time. And we'll be writing down the questions. Heather, I think you're going to be calling on people as we go.
I am. So please raise your hand. That should be at the bottom of your screen. There's a little hand. There we go. Cynthia, you have a question. Let me make sure I can figure out how to unmute you.
Hello.
Oh, you did it yourself. Good for you. Okay.
So my first question is item 2.3 in the SIR mentions there being a microphone and cameras on the throw phone. In addition to streaming that content, is it also always recording audio and video from all the mics and cameras, or does an SPD officer need to turn on recording for each relevant mic and camera? And I can try pasting my questions. I know there's been problems in the past when I've tried to do this that WebEx truncates what I post in the chat, but I'm posting it in case that's helpful to you.
Okay. Cynthia, thank you very much. We're recording this, and so if it does truncate, we'll know that. Also just want to, should it be of interest to you, you can also go to the web form and put all your questions there. As Jim mentioned, as Captain Britt mentioned earlier, we're going to be answering these questions either at the next public meeting, which is on the 28th, or we can also answer those questions in writing.
So Cynthia, I just want to make sure that I understand the question fully. I appreciate you putting in the chat, but I want to make sure that I'm seeking out the correct answer. The basics of the question are the microphone and camera on the throw phone always recording, or does it have to be turned on for each relevant device for each relevant incident? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, we will work on getting an answer for you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Captain Britt. Are there any other questions? Yes, Cynthia.
I don't know if I'm the only member of the public attending.
You're not.
Okay. So I didn't want to hog the opportunity here, so others should please raise your hand and jump into this too. I do have a lot of questions though. I'm sure that's not surprising to anybody. Item 2.3 in the SIR mentions there being a video feed. Is that video feed served over a wired or wireless connection?
So your question is whether the video feed is served over a wired or a wireless connection. Is that correct?
Yes, because that would impact potentially like security aspects from a technical angle.
Sure. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Are there any, I just want to check on the rest of our guests. Is there anybody else that has a question? Please do raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
I don't see anyone.
Okay. All right.
moment.
Go for it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, again, anybody feel free to interrupt the stream of questions at any time. I was also wondering who is responsible for deleting the recordings from the throw phone's video monitoring console's hard drive after they have been uploaded into evidence storage, and how long are recordings kept on the console's hard drive? I understand the data retention for evidence is separately mandated, and that would be managed through evidence storage. So what I'm asking about is the data that's on the hard drive for the console. Who's responsible basically for deleting those recordings, and how long is data kept there?
Okay. Captain Britt, did you get that?
I did. Who's responsible for deleting off the hard drive of the device itself, and how long is the data kept on the hard drive? And that question is independent of how long it is stored in evidence.com.
Right.
Got it.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead, Cynthia?
Okay. The next one is any part of the throw phone system connected to the SPD network? I asked because item 5.2 in the SIR says that the software, and it just says the software, I don't know which software it's talking about, the software automatically alerts users of data that must be deleted under legal deletion requirements. However, that seems unlikely to occur for data stored on systems not connected to the SPD network. Like, I can understand the technology exists that can check for file creation or age on a file system, but for these throw phones, which have their own hard drive, if it's not connected to the SPD network, I'm not clear on how that would ever have an automated deletion notification or need for deletion alert. So are there automated alerts regarding the data deletion for data stored on the throw phone monitoring system? And if so, who receives the alerts? That's like a multi-part question. I'll post that. I don't know if that's going to get truncated.
I just want to make sure I reiterate, and I see your full question there. 5.2 was the section I was trying to make sure I got right. You're wondering if it's connected to the SPD network, and this is based upon the statement within the SIR that states that there are automated notifications for deletion requirements or deletion needs for data on the device itself. And your concern is that if it's not connected to the SPD network, it seems unlikely that those notifications would function. Is that correct?
Indeed. And I'd also just add that there's a secondary question for why I asked about it is connected to the SPD network, which should also, again, impact security because now you have a thing in the field thrown into a hostile environment. Then there's the question of, is that connected to the SPD network? Yeah.
Absolutely understandable. Got it. Thank you. What's next?
I don't see anybody else raising their hand, so Cynthia, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I didn't realize that if I muted myself, I couldn't unmute myself.
No, I'm muting. No, you're generally muted every time I have to unmute you, which is totally fine. So
Oh, okay.
good. We're all good.
Okay. Regarding the recordings, item 4.7 in the SIR says that the downloaded video is submitted as evidence, but doesn't explain how that recording is downloaded and transferred into evidence storage. Are the recordings downloaded onto a USB stick, burned onto a CD or DVD, or is the Throwphone's console connected to the SPD network for direct transfer of files?
So the basic question here is, how does the data get from the device to evidence.com?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So another one is for recordings not associated with an investigation and therefore not being stored as evidence, who decides which recordings will be stored in the HNT folder on the SPD network?
So the question here is for recordings that are deemed to be not of evidentiary value for an incident, who decides what recordings will be stored on the HNT network versus recordings that are moved to evidence.com or recordings that are outright deleted?
Right.
Gotcha.
Item 5.3 in the SIR asks, this is the question in the template of the SIR, says what measures will be used to destroy improperly collected data? And SPD answer covers data collected as evidence, but according to item 4.9 in the SIR, only one out of the 5 reasons for retaining recording was for evidence in investigations. So what happens with recordings not retained as evidence? And related to this, also in item 5.3, SPD answered with parts of the CJIS security policy on disposal of digital media, but it's unlikely that SPD is throwing the video monitoring system into the garbage after each deployment, which is kind of what's meant by digital disposal. So I am left unclear as to what the actual data lifecycle is like for data on the hard drive and then stored outside of evidence.com, and what ensures that data not in scope for evidence is properly deleted.
So the real gist of that question is what methods and measures methods are in place to ensure that non-evidentiary video or improperly collected data is destroyed.
Right. And I'm
Okay.
For context, I don't see these as just pedantic things in the noodling in the details for stupid purposes or something. I'm considering the fact that in a hostage situation, you could have video content that somehow is not used as direct evidence, but might, like one of the cameras, for instance, that's recording doesn't have the perpetrator in the field of view, but it is recording, and maybe it has somebody who is unconscious. They may or may not be clothed. It could be just very private content of a person. So that's why I'm kind of having this line of questions.
No, and I don't question the motive or the meaning behind any of your questions. It makes perfect sense. We do need to account for video that is unintentionally and unnecessarily created in these situations.
Yeah, thank you. In addition to the audio and video capabilities that are described in the SIR, are there additional sensors that are on the throw phone? I don't know if there would be or not, but I figured I should ask.
Okay, we can certainly ask. I'm guessing what you're referring to is things like laser 3D readouts and sensors to determine movement or things like that.
Yeah, that would be in scope, or I mean, heck, even like different kinds of gas sensors, or I don't know what else you could put on these
sure.
things. What might exist?
Yeah, chem biosensors. Yeah, we'll ask. Thank you.
So the next question, who is responsible for keeping the software up to date, SPD or IT? It's just kind of confusing as a member of the public. It seems like they tried to, for many departments in the city, unify kind of like IT is the funnel that everybody, all the other departments work through. But then for SPD, it's kind of different because this is not quote unquote like civilian tech. And it's very specialized. So I don't know if it's IT or SPD is the one who's responsible for keeping the software up to date, which includes bug fixes or other security fixes that might be included in those updates.
Yeah. So who's responsible for making sure the software gets firmware and software updates to make sure that it functions as designed and to make sure that it keeps its security profile intact?
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay. Is there really nobody else here to ask questions? I feel very bad.
No, don't feel bad. They're all valid questions and it's totally fair. Like you're all good. Don't worry. You will definitely we'll be like, hey, another hand. You're totally all good.
Okay.
Well, and Cynthia, you're fulfilling the obligations for the public. And so
Yeah.
we greatly appreciate your participation. So don't hesitate, please.
Don't worry. We'll be like, hey, another hand. You're all good. Keep going.
Yeah, please do jump in if there is. Okay. Has SPD purchased or used any satellite-based services for their throw phones, such as the CINT Commander satellite program? That would alter the capabilities potentially that the throw phone has technically.
We'll look into that. So CINT, do you happen to know what it stands for?
1 second.
That's right. I can look it up too. Don't worry about it, Cynthia.
I found it somewhere. Critical Incident Negotiation Team. I think that's what the internet seems to think that CINT stands for. CINT Commander was a term that SPD used in the SIR.
Okay.
And that seems to be a product name, and that product provides an option for a satellite program.
We will find out if there are any satellite services attached to our throw phone.
Okay. Item 5.1 in the SIR mentioned recordings being kept in an HNT folder on the SPD network. Are there access logs for that folder, and is there monitoring and alerting for anomalous access to files in that folder?
So the question is, for the HNT folder where the SIR states some recordings are kept, are there access logs for who accesses it, who has access to it, and alerts for unauthorized access attempts?
Yeah, although to be clear, anomalous access, when thinking in the broader cybersecurity kind of sense of the term, means just in general oddities of access to files. This is just a generic terminology in the cybersecurity space, which it could be that one person, like one user ID, is going through accessing every single one back to back, especially with a small length of time in between, meaning it's probably scripted. Maybe that person's account's compromised. So anomalous access for files is kind of like a broader descriptor that's within the cybersecurity kind of industry as a whole. But that also would encompass perhaps repeat failed authentication attempts to access something and that kind of thing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is there any policy on how many and which computers are allowed to be connected to the CINT Commander's LAN where LAN is local area network. That's also a thing that's supposedly supported by the device.
Okay, how many computers can be, is there a policy on how many of which computers are allowed to be connected to the LAN?
Right.
Gotcha. I don't mean to sound like I'm just reading it off, but there are going to be points where I'm just reading it off.
That's fine.
Some of your questions are very well and concisely worded, so I don't need to sum them up any better than you already have. So that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then similar to that prior question, is there any SPD policy regarding how many and which Bluetooth devices are allowed to be paired with the CINT commander?
Okay, and I've noticed we do have a new person joined, so we are going through questions. So if you do have any questions, they will be, it sounds like y'all can keep me honest, but it sounds like they'll be addressed at the next meeting. And if you have any, please raise your hand and we will unmute you. So our new attendee, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and we will unmute you and you're more than welcome to share.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay, who decides which recordings will be kept as evidence? I don't have a legal background, so I'm not sure if that's straightforward to a lawyer type. What is in scope and what would be out of scope?
Who decides which recordings will be kept as evidence?
Right.
Gotcha.
I had a prior question that had to do with like how is data transferred from the hard drive to evidence.com. Kind of a follow-up question to that one is that is there a policy regarding which types of media are allowed to be used for transferring of that data? So it's one thing that to say, oh, we usually use let's say USB stick as the hypothetical here. It's a different one to say we only allow USB sticks by policy or something, or whatever the medium might be.
So is there a policy regarding the data transfer between the device and evidence.com or other SPD network systems?
Right.
Gotcha.
Another question is, how is the live video feed secured? Perhaps this is a more straightforward one's understanding whether it's wired or wireless as well.
I was going to say that sounds like it dovetails off the previous question as well. So
yeah.
We'll do our best to answer those together.
Yeah, the consideration too would be there could be nosy people who are trying to get onto that feed somehow. I mean, obviously you're going to have people with police scanners who will know before even the news post what's going down. So the question is, how is the video feed kept secured then?
Understood.
Okay. Does SPD use any biometric tools or systems such as voice, face, or gait analysis on the live audio video feeds or the recordings?
So the question here is, are there any biometric tools that are used in conjunction with this device to include voice analysis, facial recognition, or gait analysis related to the use of the HNT throat phone?
Right. And for both
Gotcha.
the live content and for the recordings.
Gotcha. And I'll put a note in here both for live and recorded.
Thank you. Another question, this is somewhat related to a different technology that has been discussed in the past. So I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it. What policy prohibits SPD employees from using a cell phone to record the live video feed that's on screen? And this goes back to also the point that you could have one of the camera feeds could have somebody unconscious and in a compromising situation regarding like clothing and such. And the reason I think I know that answer is because in the prior technology, that didn't seem like there was a policy. And I believe one of the council members put forward an amendment to try to propose that there be a policy. And I believe the clerk file has said that SPD just had not had the staff to take that up. So I still wanted to put that question out there, but I think I do know that answer.
That's okay. And I know exactly what you're talking about. What I wrote down is there a policy prohibiting independent recording of the video feed? Hopefully that covers, because I don't want to just limit it to cell phone. If somebody's got a little GoPro, we don't want them using that either. So we want to make sure that we, and if I recall, our response to that amendment included that we will be working on a policy to address that.
Yeah, I don't think SPD objected to the amendment or the need for the policy. I think it was a staffing hours reason given in the clerk file.
Well, the good news is as soon as we get this technology approved, we've done all the backlog technologies, and so I'm going to have nothing to do with the rest of my days. And if you believe that, no, we will be working with our policy unit to address the policy requests and requirements that have come across either by amendment or surveillance work group recommendations. This is definitely one of them. We're also working on a broader technology policy that will cover general use, and this is one of those issues that is ripe for a broad policy prohibiting this exact activity. So good note, I've written it down. Is there a policy prohibiting independent recording of video feed? And in parentheses, I'm going to put cell phone, GoPro, etc.
Right.
We will address that. Great,
thank you. That's good to hear. And then another question, another one that I also suspect I know the answer to. That's why I put these kind of towards the end of my list. Is when was the last audit of the throw phone system, and where can the public find a copy of that report? I know that the SIR outlines the entities that have the power to conduct audits of this technology. In the past, when I've asked this question, it seems like those entities have not undertaken an independent audit of those things, so that doesn't quite exist. And the next closest thing that I suspect the public will get to see in this space to answer to that question would probably be the OIG's surveillance usage review, assuming the SIR gets approved by council later. But again, I wanted to have the question on the record, especially on the off chance that it had been audited.
Just a note on that, Cynthia, the OIG has just completed drafts of some of those reports, so they'll be available publicly shortly. So it's happening. It just takes a while to get a new process geared up.
I understand. Thank you. And I am keeping an eye on the clerk files so I can see. Yeah. That was the last question I had drafted, but I did want to add that, like, given the short window of time between the SIR being posted publicly and then today's meeting, and obviously having to live my own life as well, and in addition to reading this and preparing questions, I have notes to myself on some other areas that I wanted to look into that could generate their own additional questions that I don't have prepared yet for today. So I guess I'm wondering, at the next meeting, will there like at the last surveillance technology, like public engagement kind of group that we went through at the second meeting, IT didn't really want questions at the second public engagement meeting. They only wanted concerns. So is this the last opportunity to ask questions?
No, Cynthia. You can ask questions for the entire 30-day comment period. So, which is from today until the 18th of May or 17th of May. There was a link that we mentioned earlier in the presentation, and it sounds like you probably know your way around the privacy, the privacy website. So there's an opportunity for you to make your comments or questions in that format, and that might be a good way for you to make sure that you're using all the words that you want to use. That way it's, from your keyboard into the system. So the public comment period is 30 days. And then, you know, we will attempt to answer as many questions as we can at the next meeting. And we will also include answers to questions that come later than that within the body of the legislation or SIR itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, I got that. I can do that.
And Cynthia, the comment period does not conclude SPD's commitment to answering questions about the technology, even after it's, if and when it's approved by City Council. If questions arise about its usage, the police department is always open. And I know that some people may roll their eyes at that, but the police department is always open to fielding questions and answering what we can. So the time window, and I know we're on a time window based upon the approval period, but even after that, we don't stop answering questions. So please don't hesitate to continue to reach out.
I want to reinforce what Captain Britt just said. That's absolutely true. You can ask a question at any time. And if you want to reach out to me, heather.marks@seattle.gov. I'm a good clearinghouse for questions on surveillance topics for the Seattle Police Department.
Thank you so much to both of you for clarifying that. I don't have more questions prepared.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Cynthia, I'm not kidding when I say that, you know, we're happy to provide a platform for you, but we also want to make sure that everybody feels welcome. And you've been very, very careful to note that yourself. So if anybody else has any questions, let me know now by raising your hand. All right. So there's a link here. Hey, Eleanor or Sarah, do we post this PowerPoint on the website?
So after this meeting, we will post the recording as well as this PowerPoint onto the website. Yes.
Okay.
And Cynthia, if you want to take a look through the chat and see whether or not you do see any truncation, just feel free to do that and let us know too. So, but yes, to answer your question, yes, Heather, this gets posted.
I will just
you,
say
Eleanor.
it might take another day or two to get the recording posted, but this should be posted in short order, the PowerPoint deck.
It's just whenever I look at a PowerPoint that has a link,
Right.
Correct.
So but we will post this so that you'll be able to make use of that link to submit your comments. The comments that are collected will be included in the SIR submitted to the Surveillance Advisory Working Group and then to the City Council for a council vote. Seattle.gov/tech. You can leave a comment on the Tech Talk blog. That is a very cute name. Was that you, Sarah? Did you come up with the Tech Talk blog? Just
not creative enough for that one, Heather.
Probably Megan. Okay, friends. Well, if there is nothing further, and I'm looking carefully over here at the participants bar, if there's nothing further, we will call it good. Anybody else who wants to tell your friends about the excellent fun we had today? We have another opportunity for a presentation and public comment on the 28th of April. And any questions that you have, again, will be included in the SIR. All right, if there's nothing else, I do hope all of you have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to any of us. All right, I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.
And I will stop recording.